So nice to see everybody here. My name is, hold on, I got a phone ringing. Let me turn that off. Sorry about that. My name is Susan Dotis. I am one of the global co-chairs of She is the Music Mentorship Committee. And I'd like to welcome you here tonight to our second program in our series, Music Business Basics. We are very happy to offer this series, which essentially is a way for people who are just joining our business, either as artists or executives, or people who have been in the business for a while, to really learn about the basics and fundamentals of the essential areas of the music business that everybody who's in our business needs to know, whether it's tonight's discussion about how to get a record on the radio, or whether it's about how to copyright your songs. This is information that everybody in our business needs to know. So tonight, we are very excited to have three fantastic women talking about the world of radio and radio promotion, everything from how does the record get on the radio to how it becomes a hit. And if anyone thinks radio is not important in the era of streaming, you are going to learn a lot tonight about why, if you want to be a superstar artist and have a hit record, radio is essential. So I want to just remind everybody, we will continue with Music Business Basics after the new year with sessions 3 and 4, and I promise you they will be just as exciting as the previous ones. We're looking to do one on marketing and one on copyright and the Music Modernization Act for you songwriters out there. So keep an eye on your email and on your social media feeds and keep up with what's happening in She is the Music. And we guarantee that you will never be disappointed in what we do here with Music Business Basics. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator and our host for tonight. She is the Executive Vice President of iHeart Media, which is the #1 audio company in the United States. She's also the Program Director for 105.1 here in New York, a station I like to listen to. Let's give it up for our lovely moderator, Thea Mitchem.
Thank you, Susan, appreciate that. You know, I've spent about 20 years in the radio and entertainment industry and caught the radio bug at my college radio station, Hampton University, and started my career as an intern at a local radio station and really worked my way up through the ranks. So I know how important a day like today would have been for me at 18. And most successful careers really start with an understanding of the basics and you build from there. So we're excited to be able to give you a snapshot on the power of radio, which still dominates overall listening, reaching 90% of Americans each week, and delve into what radio promotion is really all about. As Susan said, tonight we are taking you back to the basics. So first, I'd like to introduce to you our esteemed panel of experts, these two incredible women. So Natina Nimene is the Senior Vice President of Urban Platform and Artist Relations at Def Jam Records. Natina has been an influential figure in hip hop and culture for almost 15 years and has been a cornerstone of the urban promotion department at Def Jam for the past 8. A Billboard Women in Music and 40 Under 40 honoree, and recognized by her industry peers as a culture creators honoree and a hits noisemaker. Natina also adds artist relations to her portfolio, managing talent opportunities with networks like BET, MTV, Revolt, and Fuse, and acting as a go-to liaison for core Def Jam artists like Kanye West, Tiana Taylor, YG, Big Sean, Jeezy, and 2 Chainz. Natina was recently named to the advisory board of the National Museum of African American Music and is a key member of UMG's Task Force for Meaningful Change. So welcome, Natina. And then we have Nikki Farag, who is the EVP of promotion at Def Jam. She touches every platform, but has people who also focus on that. Nikki's an 18-year vet of Def Jam Recordings and the iconic hip hop label's first female head of promotion, which is amazing. She has been instrumental in breaking dozens of artists and records, notably massive radio success stories for Jay-Z, Rihanna, Mariah Carey, Kanye West, Justin Bieber, YG, Big Sean, Logic, Alicia Cara. She is also an honoree of Billboard's Women in Music this year and Variety Hitmakers. So welcome, Nikki. Welcome, Natina. My first question to get this all started is to you, Nikki. How did you get started in the industry? Let us know.
So it's kind of like I mirrored your story a little bit. I was a college DJ, my radio station in college in Connecticut. And my cousin was interning at Z100 in New York, which is a very prominent radio station in the country. And she was like, they have openings, you should, apply. So I did. And after the internship was over, about 3 months later, they called me and they said, we have an opening. Do you want a full-time job? And this is just when I graduated college. So it was like perfect timing. So as I was in the building, I used to see these people come once a week and sit in the lobby. And at one point, after like seeing them week after week, I finally got the courage to go up to one of them. I said, why are you here every week? And they said, I work for, at the time it was Jive Records. And I come in and I sit with Sharon, Tom, and Cubby, who were the program directors, which we'll get into later, and the music director. And we pitch our music to them. And I said, I don't understand. Like, you have to tell them or ask them how to put music on the radio. And mind you, I was in promotion at the time. I wasn't on the programming side of things. And they said, yes. And I was like, I want that job. So I, befriended all these record reps is what we call them. And I started sending my resume out to everyone. And then Eric Olson at the time, who was running pop promotion at Island Def Jam, hired me as his assistant.
He's a good guy. Good guy.
That's how I got in.
Right. Natina, what about you?
I feel like I'm going to tell the exact same story, but I like how everyone starts. I was actually interning in the promotions department at a radio station in Detroit. And promotion on the radio side, I was folding the t-shirts and driving the van and doing all that stuff. And one night I was still at the station, and a rep came in with Outkast. And it was during the Speaker Box Love Below album. She was an amazing rep. Her name is Lisa Coleman. And she came in to the station with Outkast. And she was a very tiny woman, thin, but she is like telling the Andre 3000 what to do. And I'm thinking to myself, like, who is this woman that's bossing the biggest group in the universe around? And I tapped her on the shoulder. I asked her what she did. She told me what she did. And from that moment on, I decided I wanted to, to boss rappers around for a living. And that's what I do. No. And so eventually I stayed in the promotions department there. And then I transferred to Radio 1 DC and WKYS. And I met my mentor, Juliette Jones, who is at Atlantic. But at that time she was at Virgin and she was the national. We'll get into what that is a little later. And they happened to be looking for, when people walked in, I told every label person I wanted to be a rep, every single person. So that day I told her and she said, we actually are looking for one. And later on that day, she and I went to dinner and we hit it off, and I've started at Virgin and I've worked at Atlantic, and then eventually I got to Def Jam 8 years ago. But we all have a similar start.
Perseverance.
Yes.
So before we move any further, since this is about the basics, let's break down some terminology so we are all this evening speaking the same language. Let's talk about formats. So I want to kind of talk about the different kind of formats. So, you're going to hear tonight us talk about top 40, CHR, pop. You're going to hear those three words interchangeably. They're the same thing, right? They're the same kind of station. Z100 New York is a perfect example. Some call it top 40, some call it CHR, which is contemporary hit radio. Some call it pop. It's the same thing. They're focused general market stations. Pop radio leans female, persons 1834 from a demographic standpoint. It's about popular music, like Kiss in LA and Z in New York. And they have some of the larger listenership because, again, it's a general market station. You're going to also hear reference to CHR rhythms like Jammin' in Boston or KMBL in San Francisco, which is a variation of CHR and pop stations, but more hip hop, leaning, still targeted 1834. You're going to hear the terminology urban, which in urban radio, which encompasses your younger hip hop mainstream stations like Power in New York or Real in LA. Also, they normally target 1834 or 1849 persons. And you'll also, under urban, it also can be an adult R&B station like WBLS in New York or MMJ Magic in DC, which targets persons 25-54. All the urban stations are considered more niche and target towards Black and Hispanic demographics, basically the tastemakers. There, of course, are other formats like alternative, alt in LA is a perfect example of that, rock, country stations like WSIX in Nashville, AC stations, which means adult contemporary stations like Light FM in New York, or hot AC stations, which is really your bridge between pop stations and AC stations, hot AC stations like KBIG in LA. When you're talking about radio, you also have to talk about NPR, which is National Public Radio, which is non-commercial radio stations, so they're underwritten, and those are more talk as well as some music. And then there's Sirius XM, which is subscription-based commercial-free radio stations, which have a variety of traditional formats like we just talked about, and then subset niche stations like yacht rock, depending on your taste. So that's kind of the world of radio, right? Different formats, you name it, you got it. And it breaks down commercial radio, non-commercial radio, and subscription-based radio. So with that, as we talk about the basics, Tina, what is the difference between a program director, a music director, an air talent, a mixer / DJ?
Well, the program director is the person that kind of manages the sound of the station, kind of curates the tone and texture of the station. And that's who we speak to about getting our record in rotation, which we'll get to that. They're the person that makes the decision on what song will be played on that particular station. I know a lot of people feel as if the jock that's on the air, the person speaking, makes the decision and they play whatever the hell, like MV plays whatever he wants to play in the morning. It doesn't work like that. Thea tells MV what to play. So that's who the program director is. The music director is honestly on the label side is really our ally, and they're the person that we go to and speak to initially, usually, and they speak to the program director on our behalf, and they're fighting with us for a particular record, but they're in the station managing the staff and helping manage the music. They're usually the person that puts a song on the mix show list. So the mixers at the station are, they do the 5 o'clock mix or the 7 o'clock mix or the morning mix or whatever that is. The DJs that kind of handle that. And they're usually the person that breaks the record initially. That's our first line of defense, is getting to the DJs. In a perfect world, we wouldn't be in a pandemic and they could break the record in the club for us, but we're not at that space and time right now. But so that's who the DJ is. Who do we touch on, Thea? We touch on the jock, the on-air personality.
You hit it. So to expound on that, Tina, then when people hear the word what an ad, they added the station or in rotation, are those the people you're talking to?
Yes. So when we make a decision offline internally about this is going to be the date that we decide to take this Big Sean record to radio. We made a decision on what the record is. A video in a perfect world has been shot, and this is the date it's going to go up live on the DSPs, which we'll touch on. And we are going to take this record to radio. It is now a priority at radio, and we pick a date, and that is the date that we go for ads. And we usually a couple weeks out, we start the process, speaking to the program director on December 11th. We're going to impact or go for ads on Big Sean Wolves. And we do our whole spiel. And then Thea, or whatever program director, will make the decision to be there on that day or any other Monday and Tuesday after that. And she'll make the decision that we are going to stand behind this record. We are going to support you, and we're going to add it. And then we're going to put it in rotation, and that's when the airplay starts.
Okay. Nikki, radio's ratings are measured through Nielsen. That's how they're measured. So in most markets, that means PPM. You always hear the terminology PPM, which is portable people meters through Nielsen. And in smaller markets, you hear the term diary, which is how it's measured through Nielsen. As a label person, do you have to be mindful on how a station wins or loses and when you're working a record?
Well, radio is our client, right? And they are our liaison in terms of helping bringing our artists to the mainstream. So you want your radio station to win. You want all of them to win, whether they're ranked number 1 or 4 or 5 in the market, they're still making some kind of impression, some kind of dent. So just so I can elaborate real quick on what PPM is, because it's maybe tread lightly here. It's a little old. So what happens is there's a sample size in each market that a radio station targets, and they're called P1s. And the reason why they're called P1s is, like, usually when you're driving in your car, people usually program in their favorite radio station on the first dial. Thank you. So they target their biggest listeners, and they send out a little hook of the song, which is actually, the bridge, the part of the song that everyone remembers, right? Mm-hmm. And these P1s, they rate the song, and these listeners have a little device on them that actually shows, or it could tell when you're tuning in and tuning out of a radio station. It's really they have it down to a science. It's actually pretty incredible how they do it. So it gives the program director, like a Thea, and even the music director, some intel and some insight of what these people really want to hear on their radio station, right? And that's important for us. Go ahead, Thea.
So Nikki, what you're referring to is more about call out, right? You're talking about call out research.
Yes.
And so on and so forth, where the hooks are sent out and rated and people give it. PPM, portable people meters.
I mixed the two, you're right.
Yes, portable people meters and Nielsen is the measurement that radio has, right? So Nielsen measurement systems is how we're measured. Just like TV is measured through Nielsen, so is radio. And there's different ways of measuring, which is portable people meters or diaries. And so from a label standpoint, your label partners are very aware, as Nikki just said, have to be aware of that, because when they walk in to work a record and the person says, well, my ratings are down, Nikki has to understand what that means, right? And know that she's gonna have a program who's gonna be working really hard to get their ratings up and maybe a little bit more challenged to playing new music. And that's why it's important for labels to understand, the differences and how, like any client, how are they measured, right? What does success look like for them? And so it's important for records to understand what success looks like for radio, just as important as it is for radio to understand what success looks like for records. If that makes sense.
Thanks for wrapping that up in a bow for me.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate you, girl.
I got you. So whoever, like Tina or Nikki, how is a major record labels department structured for the folks who are thinking about starting a career in that? What's the structure look like?
So I'll start, I'll start with our regionals. We have people that are based all over the country who cover certain territories. So we have someone in the Midwest, usually Chicago. Some people have their person in Detroit, is usually the biggest market that's in that particular territory. We have someone in the Southeast, the Southwest, so that'll be Houston or Dallas and Atlanta. And we have someone that's on the West Coast. That's how most labels are structured. Give or take a few labels may have a person maybe based in Florida, and of course we have someone based in New York to cover the Mid-Atlantic and DC and Baltimore and all those particular markets. So they're in the field. That's how we refer to them. And then then there's a national that's usually based in the home market, whether it be LA or New York, whatever company you're with. And they usually don't have a territory. They kind of just back the field staff up with calling the stations and assisting them with promotions and et cetera, that type of thing. And then there's a vice president and a senior vice president or an executive vice president, or both, depending on the company. And they kind of make most of the decisions and handle like budgets and promotions and meetings and that type of thing. So there's the people in the field staff, your national, your VP, and your SVP/EVP. That's the structure at most major record companies across all the formats.
Okay. And then Nikki, who decides when and how you go to radio, right? That's always what people say, go to radio with a single. And how do you balance that while continuing to work increased airplay for a more established artist or another record that's already on the charts?
So to answer the first part of the question, it's a collective effort. Things are different in this day and age. I would say about 10 years ago, radio would be, to think of an analogy that everyone can relate to or understand, radio would be first base. We gotta get this out. How are we doing it? How are people gonna know who this is? But now, in this day and age, radio is like a home run, right? First base is, what's your social media like? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? Is there a TikTok? What's going on? And from there, it's like, okay, well, we know what this artist likes. How do we market them into the marketplace? Do we get a sync, which is essentially trying to get a song, in a TV show or a movie or a commercial? And once our marketing department puts that together, it's like, all right, great. Like, can they perform? Can we get them out there? Can we get them to visit radio? Do they visit our partners? Can we do this? Can we do that? And once that's established, we have a story to tell. We get to go out to our programmers all over the country and say, said artist, I'll just pick Alessia, she comes to mind, has X amount of followers on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. She's done this, she teamed up with this, she got this great write-up in Vogue. We tell stories, and that's how we entice our programmers to get these artists played on the radio, because they've become more in the conversation. Radio is the platform to amplify what we've done internally as a label to develop, right? So when we come to radio, we're like, all right, we got something now. I mean, and it's like that now because streaming is so abundant, and there's thousands and thousands of artists that people are listening to on a daily basis. So how do we as a label pick the ones that are, make a priority, and the ones that we take? We have to develop a story first and then take it there. And then how do you prioritize, which was the second question. I mean, every artist has their own developing story. Our biggest artists at Def Jam, right? Currently we're working Justin Bieber on the top 40 and Hot AC formats and rhythm format. And at Rhythm and Urban, and Natina can speak on this, we're working Janae Aiko, who was just nominated for Album of the Year. Everyone needs to go see that, listen to it. So good. Everyone has their own trajectory. And how do I prioritize in terms of like what priority I want my record to get played? I'm a big believer that you have to understand what your radio station's putting out, what their product is. So some of them lean a little bit more pop, and they play a lot of pop music. Like you look at the Billboard charts, the media-based charts, and you'll see they mirror what like number 1 through 15 usually is, or number 10. Some of them lean rhythm. So I would be working Janae more on a rhythmic leaning pop station than I would at a pop leaning station. So you don't want to talk to your radio station and not know your client, not know how they are positioned in their marketplace, because they have competitors too.
I guess my next question is, do different formats work differently? Is it a different approach if you're doing an urban station versus a pop station or an alt station?
I mean,
yes.
I think so.
Go ahead, Natina.
I mean, but Nikki, you can speak on your formats. I mean, I know that all stations are relationship driven, for sure. I know that I always felt that urban stations, the connection was different between the label person and the programmer, but I feel like urban still leans on gut a little more than some other formats. Nikki, would you say that?
And rhythm radio, more lifestyle.
Like a programmer still will lean on the DJ, and if the DJ says the song is hot, or this worked before, and I know it's pretty, it's pretty early, but I feel like it's going to work again. That it's not so much like, you know, explain to me what the streams are like and tell me the Shazam numbers. It's not as much that there are stations that are like that, but I do feel like urban leans a little bit more towards what the streets are saying and what the culture is saying and you know, how it feels. That's just my, you know, that's what I believe.
So then how influential is the mixer DJ to that?
Oh man, for like, absolutely. I was so like upset this summer that there were no clubs or anything, so I couldn't start there. But and again, in my world, in the urban space, and Thea, you can tell me if this is true. Like if a DJ says, when I dropped it at Compound, they went crazy. Like that means something. Like that doesn't necessarily mean something for another format. So the DJ playing it in the streets or saying that they believe that it's a hit, like they live and breathe music. They're the first people to hear it. They're the first people to get a taste of it. So the DJ is super important. That's the first person that we speak to, especially on the urban side.
They're like the gatekeepers.
That's the gatekeeper. That's the first person we call when we get a record.
Yeah.
We want a DJ to break it in the clubs. We are giving it to a DJ to break in the morning mix or the afternoon drive mix. DJs are crucial to what we do.
It's the same at rhythm. It's the same at rhythm radio. I would even say alternative radio too, because they're all lifestyle formats.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the key opportunities, speaking of that, like radio shows or interviews or key markets that are considered tastemakers in different genres when looking to build radio history?
Someone needs to
Sing it, girl.
Alexandra.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
That was an interlude. It was a little interlude. Right?
All right.
She's probably mortified right now.
Mortified.
Okay, and I'm not saying that because Thea, you're our amazing moderator, but of course, like the end all be all is the Breakfast Club. So that they are the tastemakers of the tastemakers. And if you can get Charlemagne to say you like that, he likes a song or a person, like we're all like praising Jesus. But I mean, like, the Breakfast Club, I think that there's still like, if you do a freestyle for Cosmic Hev in Philadelphia, that goes a long way. Or if you do a freestyle for Sway, there's these pockets of parts of the country and stations and markets. And it really depends on the artist too. Like a Southern artist, you know, you would want to do Greg Street in Atlanta at V103, and for him to believe in you and for him to welcome you with open arms. So there's those are just a couple that come to mind for me at the urban format.
How important are those radio shows, Nikki?
The radio shows are like the big payoff for us, for the label and for the artist. At that point, your record or records, your artist records are doing exceptionally well on the radio station. Most of the time, the records are in power, and what that means is it depends on how many times a radio station plays a song per week, but it's the coveted spot. It's the, you know, you want to hear your record 12 times a day on a radio station from an artist and label perspective, and even a P1 because it's their favorite song, right? So the radio shows, it's about, I would say, it depends on the market, but you know, we'll speak about New York, the Z100, Jingle Ball, which where Jingle Ball has originated from. You know, you get like 10 artists, and those are the biggest artists of the year in terms of consumption. And again, it's like it's such a big payoff for us in the label, because at that point it's like, wow, we developed an artist and hopefully essentially broke an artist. It's a really good feeling.
And I mean, the radio show, it's like, those are the hottest artists at the station at that time. And it means a lot. You get like, there's 7 or 8 slots. And when the station wants you, that means that they know that their listeners love this particular artist, love their catalog or love their record at that time. And it says a lot, because radio shows are always popping. Like it's always the biggest artist at the time. So when your person can get there, especially a new artist with a new record, it's huge. Second.
Ricky Rick.
So let me ask you guys, how do you manage when artists have relationships with radio stations directly? And do you find it helpful if an artist has a direct relationship with a radio station or a prominent DJ, or does it get in the way, particularly if you guys aren't going for that single or working as a priority? Like, is that helpful or is it not helpful? How do you guys manage that?
You want me to take that?
You
got it?
But I hate it. It drives me crazy.
Listen, it doesn't overall, it doesn't benefit us, right? Because I don't want to say it's bad having a relationship with a programmer as an artist, but you know, as a label, we're a machine. We need to get behind the particular priority, and songs take a long time to connect. And sometimes the artist is just like over the song and wants to get to the next one because they're eager and they're like, they've heard their song so many times. And for us, it's like, wait a minute, we haven't even gotten to the point where we understand how big it can get. Like, it takes a really, like, there are records I've worked for 9 months to get to the top. And at that point, the artist is so burned out by and so for them to come in and have side conversations, you know, you'll have a programmer and say, well, you know, so-and-so called me, the record, you know, he's on to the next, or she wants this single. And you're like, whoa. It like shakes your world up completely.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because on the radio side, it's like you want the relationship with the artist, but you can see sometimes how the label side, there's a cringe there. And you're like, oh, I already heard the single. Fat Joe played it for me already. And you're like, okay.
When they're over it, or they'll say, okay, you don't like this song, okay, play this one. It's like, no, we're focusing on this particular record. Yeah. And then it's like, or sometimes they call and make a bunch of promises, they forget, and then it comes back on you as a label person because they said they were going to do something that that date on their calendar isn't even open, but they're just talking, and because they want to be down and want to have the relationship. So that's another downside to that. I like that a programmer likes your artist personally, and that means that they really believe in them and want to get behind them. That's great. But when they start having those private conversations, it can get a little muddy for sure.
So how do you break a new sounding record? Like, you know, I always hear label people call it the work records. Are there certain sounding records that get more traction than others when it comes to hit radio? When I think of new sounding records for both of you guys, I think of like a Kanye record, which is different. And how long can you work a work record, so to speak?
So that's an interesting question, because there is no particular sound that it's like an open forum. Like, we don't know if these records are going to take off, but what we do know is how to get airplay, right? So again, now things are different because we're in 2020. If they're indicators in streaming, or, you know, you have particular tastemakers or influencers co-signing the song, or even TikTok, if there's something viral going on, or on Instagram, you know, their IG live was popping off the other day, and, you know, someone was listening to, you know, like Versus, you know, like that's become a phenomenon, right? And you can see the correlation in terms of consumption. Like, you haven't heard these songs in a while and you go. So you have like, there's energy and momentum behind a particular song, you know? So, I mean, we've worked a bunch of those at Def Jam, like a bunch. And like I was saying earlier, sometimes it's taken, like Logic 1-800. I don't know if you guys know that song, but it was a massive single across all formats, and that took 9 months. Alessia Cara Here was a breakthrough, that took another 9 months.
Yeah.
Bieber records were not easy to get on the radio at all. It was, I mean, I'm sure some of you are like, you can't, even Kanye record, Rihanna records, they all took work. All of them had work records because we stuck behind it as a label. We had a bigger plan for it. You don't know what's going to pop off.
Right.
You just don't.
Well, speaking of streaming, since streaming is such a big part of today's landscape, so is it still important to break an artist on radio today? And is there a big difference in terms of global impact on an artist that an artist can really achieve if they're not on radio?
So Well, go back to the first part of the question, because there was 3 questions in there. What was the first part?
Well, is it, first of all, is it still important to break an artist on radio? And if an artist isn't broken on radio, do they have the same global impact as they would if they were?
They're absolutely 2 different things in this day and age.
Mhm.
Some artists, 9 out of 10 artists that sign to record labels these days sign because they want to get played on the radio. It is a known fact, period. There's so much talk about how radio is outdated and nobody's listening. You know, maybe the 11, 12, 8, 9-year-old kids are not listening, but you still have the 18 to 45-year-old demo listening and tuning into radio. So those particular artists, we make a priority to get them what they want. And like, that's part of the development process. My, you know, baseball analogy, it's crazy. I'm using baseball because I don't even like sports, but like the baseball analogy, right? So there are other artists on our label that are about consumption in other ways. They want to find, I mean, there's like really cool things that you can do, different magazines that co-sign you, different little events. I mean, when we had concerts and shows, South by Southwest was a huge festival for us. Coachella was a huge festival for our new artists to break out and just get their name out there. And so it's great that you get to work 2 different lanes. Not all of them want to be on the main, you know, in the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hear a lot about charts, right? And certainly I hear a lot about charts as a programmer from label people. So what formats really matter for the chart position, and how does radio impact and streaming impact those numbers, and vice versa? Do they work hand in hand? Is one more important than the other? How important is the chart for you?
I mean, the chart absolutely is important. And, you know, the chart, like everything that we do with videos and streaming and all of that, all works hand in hand to go towards the Hot 100 chart. So, I mean, when we're working a record, when Nikki and I are working a record at both formats in sync, and we're dealing with all the other departments, I mean, the goal is always to have a record on the, you know, the Billboard Hot 100 chart. So it's super important for sure.
And how does streaming affect that?
I mean, streaming is something that comes into play as streaming works hand in hand with us when we're working the record to get onto the Hot 100. We're dealing with streamings, we're dealing with the video views, and we're dealing with the song, that radio, like all of that is all hands on deck when it goes towards that, for sure.
Totally get it. So how, when you talk about, and the reason why I want to, you know, I'm not trying to spend too much time on streaming, but I do think it's important when you talk about how it affects your charts and then how it affects going to radio and so on and so forth. What do you say to young people who say it's all about streaming, or even people who have been in the business say it's all about streaming and it's not about radio?
It goes back to what the priority is for the artist, right? Like I said, 9 out of 10 artists want to get on the radio. And is streaming a big component of getting into the mainstream? Absolutely. Absolutely. The first thing people do when they hear a new artist, they go on Spotify or Apple Music. Like, what? Or YouTube. They want to see the visual. They want to see what they look like. So for those who don't want radio, sometimes I almost want to prove them wrong and just be like, and if they have a hit song, right? Something that we think that could be something, you know, we start garnering airplay in certain places, because you could do that. You could pick certain regions to get airplay first. So like, you know, and like Natina was saying, when the clubs were popping off and like we would go to the clubs or whatever, and we would hear certain song, you'd hear a song over and over again, and you're like, oh, this can get played. People want to hear it. So I don't like to poo-poo streaming, because if anything, it helps us narrow down what we could potentially bring to the mainstream and amplify to be bigger. It's a nice indicator, instead of radio just being out there all alone. Like if we're out there just getting airplay and we don't have anything else to back it, the record's gonna fail.
But and it also depends a lot on the format and the record and the artist, et cetera. Because sometimes with older talent, you know, the older demographic doesn't stream as much as the younger demographic does. Like we were talking the other day, and someone, I was with 2 Chainz, and someone asked where could they buy the album, which is something I haven't heard in a really, really long time. So the older demographic, and a lot of times what we run into is we try to kind of push them towards streaming because they aren't quite there yet. They're used to buying physical products. So that's something that we've been, that's a challenge we've been dealing with in recent times as well.
Well, is today's radio audience more active or is it more passive? What do you guys think?
I would say it's neither or. It's either or. So it depends on the listener. Like some people just go in their car, which nobody's doing right now, and just drive from work to and from work. They just want to hear what's going on, like just, you know, background music, especially in the office. You know, you're in your cubicle, you're in your office, and you just want to hear some like light music, or you know, you want to jam, put some fucking hip hop on, whatever it is. Then there are people that are like, oh my God, I just can't wait to turn on so-and-so station, Z100, because like I haven't heard this song all day, or I haven't done this. Like it, you know, when we speak of radio, like people forget there's a huge part in the country. Forget about the East Coast and the West Coast. Like there's this huge gap in the middle where a lot of people don't have access to Spotify or streaming or Apple Music. Like they get free music by just listening to the radio. You know, everyone thinks that everyone's on a smartphone, and like, sure, a majority of the people are, but there are a lot of kids that don't have a smartphone. And the only way they get to hear music is on the radio. And that's a reality that we don't speak about often. So and those kids are aggressively turning on the radio, like they're like switching between stations.
And people are still, I think that listeners are still passionate about certain talent, so they turn on the radio. I think that when you're driving to work, like you really want to hear what that particular person on the morning show is saying, or when you're coming from work, you care about what that afternoon drive talent is saying. I don't think it's just all about the song. I think it depends on the station and the market, and if the person is really passionate about what's happening in the community, so they want to call in and discuss it, or they want to hear what people have to say, or they want to hear some local news. Like, I think it's just bigger than just the song when we speak about radio.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to make sure we get to some questions, and we have a lot of questions coming in. So before we do, you know, what, from both of you guys, what do you love the most about your job in relations to radio and promotion, and radio promotion?
I love when a new artist breaks. I love when they come in and they are like so humble and excited with their song, and they play the music, and then they get a song, and we impact it, they become a star. And I love those kind of success stories. Like it brings me like joy because this is their art, this is their gift, this is something they've been dreaming of their entire life. So when you're able to play a part in helping someone's dream come true, what's better than that? So that's my favorite part, is the new artist, and when they flourish and thrive, and then they become like this big deal, and then they hate us, and we can't get them on the phone anymore. But that's
so true. So true. I share the same exact sentiment with Natina. That is my favorite part. You know, we used to get in our cars and drive these artists around.
Yeah.
Literally station to station before streaming became a thing. And, you know, even with the biggest artists in the world, Rihanna, Bieber, Kanye, even Jay-Z, all in our little rental cars.
Years and years and years ago, Jay-Z being like, I was working at the radio station. So this was 20 years ago. Jay-Z was principal for a day at a station, and it was at a high school, and it was like just like 100 kids. Like that's something he would never do in a million years now, but he was still grinding at that time. So yeah, there's a bunch of stories like that, but those are the things that you can say, I played a part in that. I played a part in them becoming who they are. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And you both have played such a major part in so many artists' lives that it's really exciting for, I think, everyone to get a chance to hear from you. We have a lot of questions.
Okay.
So I'm just going to delve in here. One question says, what do you look for when hiring someone right out of college or with limited experience in the industry, and any tips on how to be more desirable on paper?
I'll jump in, and then Nikki, you can jump in after me. For promotion is a very relationship-based position and department. So we look for people who are likable, because we need, amongst other things, but that's one of the things, like you have to be able to, there's a lot of courting, so to speak. So there's a lot of dinners, and the program director needs to want to pick your phone call up because they like you. And that's not kiss anyone's ass, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but it's definitely like,
it's okay. It's okay.
It's about like, yeah, you're on the road with artists. You're driving them from city to city. Like we don't want like some like super shy, meek person. And it's a very tough and intense position. And you have to be able to take no's and take it on the chin and continue to fight. And you have to be tough, and you have to get on the road and get these guys up and get them the radio on time. There's a lot of qualities that you need to have. And I think that you have to have like perseverance and persistence and great personality, and, you know, not super sensitive. Like those are some of the things that I look for as it relates to a promotion position, like that kind of energy.
They have to have that charisma. They have to be able, in the drop of a hat, to kind of like to adapt to any environment, because you don't really know sometimes what you're walking into, like either a dinner that you're taking at your programmer because we're going to a show after, and then after the show, it's like your artist said they were going to say hello, but then they didn't want to, and they want to do it after the show, and the programmer's all mad, and you're like, no, let's just hang out. Like you have to be able to adapt, and it's hard. It's exhausting. I mean, but you can't really do that when you're interviewing, right? When you're interviewing someone out of college, like, so I can speak recently because when I hired my current assistant, Michael Jackson, and that's his real name.
Not that
he came into the office with so much confidence, and not only was I asking the questions, like he had a bunch of questions for me, like, is this job good for me? And this guy's coming out of college, always wanted to work at Def Jam, but there was something about him that I could tell that he was going to excel. Like he just wasn't gonna. He had a sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Like I could tell in the first hour that I met him.
It set him apart.
Chemistry is everything. Yeah, I could tell him apart. Yeah.
So another question: throughout your time in the industry, how have opportunities and the landscape changed for women in the business?
Oh, dramatic. I mean, who were we 20 years ago? Just kidding. Dramatically, like unbelievably, women have more and more, because I would say like people like me and people like Natina and people like Thea, like we're in these roles. I know their stories, but like it wasn't easy. It just wasn't easy. Like you know that you did better work than your counterpart, but this counterpart was in the boys club, so he just always got the accolades, or he got to go out to that dinner and you didn't, but you did the work, you know. And I always say to women, like, sure, like get mad about it, like be upset, but like don't take away from your, like, what the goal is. Go home, drink a little, come back the next day. I'm serious, like get the steam out, right? This is real shit, because like your feelings get hurt, and you got to focus on like the goal, what your goal is.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember saying to myself, like, I want to be the best one in the room. How am I going to do that?
Yeah, not the
so
best.
they have to, right. So they have to acknowledge me, not me trying to be like, hey, I'm over here.
Yeah, and,
right.
and I don't think you necessarily have to like lead with that all the time either. I think you just get in the room, work your butt off, just, not be afraid to say what you have to say, stand firm on, your opinion, and don't ever like shrink. And I know some of those rooms can be super intimidating when you get in, but it is what it is. But, I remember from when I first started that everyone used to talk about the time before me when there were so many women who were presidents of companies and Sharon Haywards and all these women. But that was the class before me. So I didn't know or see any of that until like recent times with all these amazing women that are getting promoted and getting all these opportunities. I think it's awesome. And they're like younger, like my girlfriend Latrice is a GM and my friend Sherry's a president. There's so many women that are getting these looks, and it's just awesome.
Any concern we'll go backwards?
Yeah, but we're not going to let that happen.
That's right.
No, I don't think so.
Another question.
It's not going backwards, right, Thea?
Oh, no, I'm not going anywhere. No, not at all. Another question, any good books or podcasts that you would recommend? It could be something that personally inspired you or something helpful related to the music business.
Let me think.
Well, like getting into promotion 20 years ago, I was like required to read this book called Hitman. It's just like how the music business used to operate in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's really night and day. It just gives you like a story about that. So like I recommend that people read that. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing what happened back then. And now it's just more about like, I like Brene Brown. She's awesome. Great podcast.
And there's some great docs. If you look at, I think if you're a music lover, like you should definitely look at Clive Davis's doc, and you should look at Jimmy Iovine's and Clarence Avant. There's so many amazing documentaries for music lovers, so you can really see that's true passion. Those people, that's like live, breathe music and culture. I think those are really good ones. You can find all those.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, perfect. So I'm going to wrap this up. This has been a great.
I can't believe it's been an hour already.
It is literally. I even looked at the clock and I was like, "Wow, this has really been an hour." Just the last question I have for you guys is, what advice would you give a young person who's watching you right now?
I say get a mentor and get an internship. Stay passionate. I'm trying to think of what else. The time is just so different. Like there weren't like a million of these opportunities. Like when I got into it, the panels had just stopped. The conferences had just kind of stopped. Thea, I know you were able to go to a million of those. So like
the tail end, Natina, the tail end of the
tail end. But
I think put some more age on me than I have.
Yes, but I think that with social media, like you're able to have a lot more access to information and access to people. Like we would have to like pray one day we could run into a Thea Mitchem or someone. So I think they just utilize social media and all these different activations and panels and conferences and conversations, and join whatever amount of organizations that you need to join for music and arts and all that stuff, and just continue just work your butt off.
Absolutely. Nikki?
Just don't give up. I know it sounds so cheesy. I really mean it. Like, don't give up. If you feel like, if you know you're really good at something, like just do everything you can to get it, because it will pay off. It might not be when you want it. but I believe in the universe and all that stuff. So like, it wasn't supposed to happen that time. It's supposed to happen when it was supposed to happen. So like, but just don't give up.
And be be patient and just always like stay in your lane and do your work. Don't look to the left and to the right and compare yourself to what everyone else is doing. I know social media makes it feel like everyone is a superstar and everyone has $1 gazillion and everything is perfect. That is not the case. Just continue to do the work and do your work.
The one thing that I would say that I always say to all my interns is you have nothing to lose. And you have to walk in that room when you're just getting started. You have nothing to lose. You don't have the job, so there's nothing wrong with you going after the job. You want to have the conversation with the CEO of the company. You're scared to make yourself known that you want to have that conversation. For what? Have the conversation. Try to get that meeting. Try to get that conversation. Try to get that email. Try to get that phone. Like, don't be fearful, because you have nothing to lose, because the only thing someone can tell you is no, and it already is no. So walk with that confidence, like, I'm going to at least try. If you don't bet on yourself, don't expect anyone else to bet on you.
That's
so
just
walk with that confidence and know, if they tell me no, it was no before I asked. But there's many times that the no turns into a yes. So that would be my advice to young people. I say to my interns all the time, I think they think I'm a broken record, but it is true. And you have to say that to yourself. Go in the mirror, go in the bathroom, look in the mirror, tell yourself whatever you need to say, okay, when I walk out of here, I'm going to walk in and introduce myself to that person and strike up a conversation and say, I'd love to get 10 minutes of your time.
Yep.
And that's what you have to do. So thank you, Natina. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you, Thea.
Wonderful. This has been wonderful. And thanks to everyone for joining, and stay tuned for the next Music Business Basics series. And make sure you're signed up in the database and follow SITM's socials to stay up to date. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
That was great.
Great job.